Thank you very, very much. And thank you, Mark, for inviting me to this very important conference. When I saw the headline of our panel, National Interest and Global Responsibility, Balancing Priorities, I thought that is exactly what I have been doing for the last 7 years when I have been a minister of EU affairs, of trade, of foreign affairs. It's one of the most pressing issues that you have to deal with. And it is, at the same time, it's impossible to solve the big problems that we have now, be it climate, be it the military conflict, be it COVID, if you are not cooperating. At the same time, all politicians have domestic situation to take care of that many times ask for a much, much stronger national view than an international view. I have seen these flaws and difficulties in the multilateralism, but I have also seen several good proposals and good initiatives. Since we are here in North Macedonia, I think it's relevant to start with one of the most important multilateral organization, OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. I was chair of this organization in 2021, directly following Albania. We had a very, very close relation in the so-called Troika, Albania, Sweden, and North Macedonia. Also Poland were part of it. You know, you have three and then you move like that. Now it's the foreign minister of North Macedonia, Bojar Osmani, who has the chair. OSCE is the guardian of the European security order, and that is the principles that we have all agreed on what should be how should we keep peace and security in this vast area of 57 countries. Is Europe, is Central Asia, is North America, of course, Russia. I would say that now this extremely important organization is in deep crisis. And the main reason is, of course, the full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine. Ukraine, and I have to remind you, a friendly country that didn't pose any threat at all. The European security order, it's a lot of principles, or not a lot, maybe 10 or something like that, but it started already in Helsinki in 1975 to say, okay, we agree that every country could do their own choice of what security they would like to have, what security order. Do you want to be a member of NATO? Do you want, at that time, to be a member of the Warsaw Pact? Do you want to be neutral? Do you want to be military and online? It should be up to every country. Also, not to threat any other country of violence or to take any territory by violence, or to let freedom of speech, democracy, freedom of minorities, all those issues that is so important when it comes to cultural diplomacy should flourish. And we together made institutions that should save those policies and principles. We had a ministerial meeting in Stockholm in December 21, 1.5 years ago. I invited the ministers, there were 48 ministers to the dinner just before the formal negotiation. There was both Foreign Minister Lavrov, Foreign Minister Blinken, and the rest. And this was kind of a watershed in the geopolitical discussion because, to everybody's surprise, Foreign Minister Lavrov said, we don't believe in the European security order any longer. We think that we are not safe enough. We want to go back to the situation in 1997 with those who were countries of NATO then, And we don't want, absolutely not, any country to become member of NATO again. That meant, if you're a Swede, that you start to think, what? Is it not the Swedish people? Is it not the Swedish parliament? Is it not the Swedish government who should decide if we want to be in NATO or not? What are you saying? It was a shock. And of course it was great reaction and it was a big discussion. Then we understood it was not just a test balloon, it was for real. I think that the Russians had felt that they had the possibility to do things like that because they have tried already in 2008 with Georgia. 20% of the territory is still not under Georgian government control. In Crimea, 2014, 15,000 people, remind you, 15,000 Ukrainians died from 2014 until the 24th of February, but there has been very lame reaction. Then came the full-scale invasion. And I think that an organization like OSCE, with its mixture of governments, civil society, minority rights, with journalists, with everything, is fundamental. And the question is, how do we get it back on track? We don't even have a chair to take over after North Macedonia next year, because it's unanimity and Russia has put on their veto. So what will happen? We don't have a budget for 2023, and now it's September, meaning that you cannot do it. So here you have a very clear example of national interest that is dominating over the global responsibility. Of course, OSCE is the biggest regional security organization in the world. It's working under the United Nations. And of course, the United Nations, going into that, is of urgent need for reforms as well. 2020 was the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, and the member states charged the Secretary General Guterres to draft the proposal for meaningful reforms of the organization. And he issued something called Our Common Agenda that should be worked with in a broader sense, not only by governments, but all in society. And partly because of this, a multidisciplinary group of scholars, practitioners, former government officials, like me, like many here, decided to take an initiative for a conversation in 2022 to examine more closely the idea related to a revision of the United Nations Charter. This initiative is headed by an organization called the Global Governance Forum. Maybe some of you know the dynamic executive director, Augusto Lopez Claros. And in parallel with the Secretary General's ideas, this group of more or less a civil society was then he put on a high-level advisory board on effective multilateralism that was co-chaired by my former Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, and the former President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And they recommended, now just a few months ago, that the 2024 Summit of the Future should announce a charter review. With all these initiatives from the civil society and from the governments and from the organizations, I think there is a possibility, if there is a cooperation and if there is a political will. This group now that I also belong to has worked out a statement which puts forward elements for consideration for eventual review of the UN Charter, and I hope that all of those ex-prime minister and ex-presidents that are in this room would like to sign this, because we already have 20 Nobel laureates who has signed it. So I think that's a very important thing to push for the summit next year. I think that there is so much to gain by involving civil society. We talked about musicians, but we talk about all different groups in the work to change international organization and things like that. I made it a rule that on all my travels, and I traveled to all the missions in the OSCE, and I traveled every week as a foreign minister to meet with feminists, trade unionists, LGBT people, trade unionists, journalists, because it's always a good thing that when you speak then to your counterpart, you have got another view of the situation, or sometimes the same view. But anyway, you get the view from the rest of the society before we as governmental representatives meet. You mentioned about Trump, and I would say that that was really, really a big blow to multilateralism. And just to take one example, we have a very important organization called the Arctic Council. That is all the countries, 8 countries, that has territory above the polar circle. And for the first time ever, when Trump became president, he decided that if in the final document there were anything about climate change, United States would not sign. And you could imagine in the Arctic, where the glaciers are melting, and it's one of the big possible disasters, because the glaciers are sinking, the sea level would rise, then not to mention anything about climate or environment when the 8 foreign ministers and their big delegations meet, that would be impossible, because nobody will accept that kind of behavior. So the first time ever, there was no final document and no decisions. And that's a very typical example, I think, when you put your national interest first. Trump didn't want to be active also in the United Nations, and as a response to that, France and Germany took an initiative to start the Alliance for Multilateralism. I don't know if you know about it, but it's a kind of an aggregator of goodwill aiming at developing and putting into practice new methods for multilateralism. And the Alliance for Multilateralism has 2 objectives, both to show that a majority of states actually support and value United Nations and multilateral work, but also to create a network of states that are ready to support initiative for international cooperation. And we were many foreign ministers. There is this family photo in 2019 when we did it. And I remember there was kind of a vibrant feeling. We will not let nationalism and putting your country before the responsibility of all go in beforehand. We will fight this. There are 3 very clear ambitions. One is to protect, preserve, and advance international law. The second is to conduct powerful initiative where we need further development in the multilateral system, especially when governments are not enough, especially when we need the help of civil society, be it organizations, be it journalists, be it any other group in the society. And then, of course, the third one, to try to modernize and reform existing international organizations. So it's more democratic, more transparent, more able to produce concrete results for the citizens. I think also that I think that maybe we have a question and answer, but I will not be too long, even if I have so many more things to say. But I will just say one thing where I think that cultural diplomacy would really help my country right now. And that is because we have seen a very, very bad divide between the Muslim world and Sweden. And it started with a disinformation campaign that became viral when some, and we know it comes from some Muslim countries and organizations, claim that Sweden's social services are kidnapping Muslim children for religious conversion. And that is, of course, false. But it became so big, this notion that Sweden is kidnapping Muslim children. The reason behind it is that in Sweden we have the International Convention of the Child as a law. It's in our constitution. And that means that you're not allowed to do anything with your children, even in the family. You cannot even, pull them in the hair or anything. You cannot treat them with disrespect. You can discipline them, but never with any physical. And if a child has not a good family situation, then there is a possibility for the social authorities to take that child away and put them in a foster care. But it's a long process. It's very big. And this process, because there were some rather terrible situations for children, came to this viral, using all the media, all the internet, all the TikTok, everything, to claim that we are doing this. What I tried to do was to use kind of cultural diplomacy. We tried to meet as many Muslim organizations as possible. We tried to meet all the ambassadors to explain, how do we see in this? How do you see in this? And now, if we're in Sweden, we have to follow our law. And we can respect that we don't have the same law, but this is the case. And we needed to reach out to the mosques and the imams and to ask them to help us in explaining what we thought. And now, I guess nobody has missed that there is another row of problems between Sweden and the Muslim countries. And that's because mainly an Iraqi citizen who we have granted permit in our country is burning Qurans all the time. And he goes to mosques and he burns the Quran. And then they put it on TikTok and internet and so on. And it has led to enormous demonstration in Pakistan, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in many, many countries, asking for boycott of Swedish, like IKEA or H&M or whatever. And here we also need to do the same. We need the help of the Muslim society in Sweden, the imams again, the people in the mosque, the organization, to explain why we have a different law also here. We have the most freedom of speech as nearly any country in the world. It doesn't mean that the government or the police is given permission to burn a Quran. It doesn't mean that. But it means that if you ask to have a demonstration, the police has to grant you the permission, and they cannot say that you should not do anything. If you burn a Quran, that is acceptable by the law, but it's not a permission to burn the Quran. It's a permission to hold a meeting. This is extremely hard to explain, of course, for believing Muslim, because it's something that we from the former government and the new government say that this is something that we don't think you should do, but you're allowed to do it. It's also very special that this Iraqi citizen is also a member of the nationalistic party in Sweden, the Sweden Democrats, who is against all Islam, the whole faith, actually. So that's a problem. And here, I don't think we can solve it without cultural diplomacy, really. I don't think we can solve it without it. So this is a very typical, very delicate, very difficult situation. So finally, I will just say that we need more cooperation, we need more multilateralism, we need more involvement of civil society in relation between countries, and we need more of the cultural diplomacy. And I hope that these kind of gatherings is a way to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Linde.